Every single breath you take, every flicker of emotion, every single second of your existence, you are a source, an energy so potent, so essential, that unseen forces have built an entire system around humanity. A grand, intricate farm designed to harvest what you unknowingly radiate. And the most chilling part? You are utterly blind to it. Your human eyes, those limited instruments, can only grasp a microscopic sliver of reality. Just 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That tiny visible sliver you call light is not freedom. It is a cage for your perception. But what about the other 99.9965%? What unseen currents, what unheard frequencies are swirling around your body right now? What precious commodity are they carrying, broadcasting from your very core? The answer will unravel everything you believed about your place in this world, about who you are, and why you are here. In 1958, a man named Robert Monroe, an American broadcasting executive, stumbled upon something extraordinary. He began to spontaneously leave his physical body during routine naps. These weren't fleeting dreams. They were full, conscious journeys into dimensions existing right alongside our own. For 4 decades, Monroe meticulously documented thousands of these out-of-body experiences, each one stripping away another layer of the fabricated reality we're all caught in. But one particular journey, one chilling encounter, ripped open the darkest secret of human existence. Monroe met what he described as a light being, an intelligence of immense power, operating from a frequency our limited senses simply cannot register. And this being revealed a truth that will turn your stomach. Earth is not just a planet. Humans are not free beings. We are, in essence, livestock. The entity explained that when humans die, their life force, their energy is released, and it is promptly harvested by transdimensional beings who use it to prolong their own existence. This energy has a name. They call it Loosh. The unseen energy harvest. Loosh, according to Monroe, is the emotional energy radiating from all biological organisms, but most powerfully from humans. It's produced when we experience intense feelings: fear, love, suffering, ecstasy, rage, devotion. Every single emotion you've ever felt, every peak and valley, releases a specific frequency of Looshian. And some frequencies, they're far more valuable than others. The most potent Loosh, the highest grade, comes from human suffering, from deep trauma, from unbearable heartbreak, from the very depths of human anguish. And Earth itself, this world we call home, has been deliberately engineered to maximize this Loosh production. Just think about it for a moment. Why is human existence so steeped in pain? Why do we endure loss, betrayal, disease, poverty, war, and ultimately death? Why is suffering a universal constant, woven into the fabric of every culture, every era, every human life? Monroe's revelation offers a terrifyingly logical answer. Because suffering produces the highest grade of Loosh, the entire planetary system, from our governments to our religious institutions to our economic structures, has been subtly, meticulously engineered to keep humanity in a perpetual state of emotional distress. We are not living in a civilization. We are living in a sophisticated cultivation system, and the farmers are watching, always watching, from frequencies we cannot perceive. But the rabbit hole goes even deeper. The electromagnetic spectrum stretches from radio waves, miles long, to gamma rays, smaller than atoms. Human vision captures only a minuscule fragment, wavelengths between 430 and 790 nanometers. Everything below that, invisible. Everything above it, invisible. Scientists confirm that we are effectively blind to 99.997% of reality. Now ask yourself, what lives in that vast invisible spectrum? What intelligences operate on frequencies our biology simply cannot access? Monroe claimed these Loosh harvesters primarily exist in the ultraviolet and infrared ranges, frequencies just beyond our human perception. They can see us perfectly. They can observe every emotional spike, every trauma response, every moment of suffering. But we are blind cattle, and they are invisible ranchers. This idea of Loosh harvesting didn't start with Monroe. Ancient Gnostic texts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries describe entities called Archons, malevolent rulers who feed on human emotions. The hypostasis of the Archons, a sacred Gnostic scripture unearthed in Egypt, explicitly states that these beings are psychic vampires, clinging to the human soul, feeding on emotional energy like fear and hatred. They manipulate events, creating dramatic scenarios designed to generate negative emotions, and then they harvest the resulting energy. Does that sound familiar? Every war, every economic collapse, every mass tragedy, every engineered crisis, all of it generates tsunamis of Loosh for entities we cannot see. The Gnostics warned us 2 millennia ago. Monroe confirmed it in the 20th century, and today the evidence is everywhere, if you simply know where to look. The science of suffering. Scientists have recently started studying what they call bio-photon emissions, weak light photons spontaneously emitted by human cells. Research published as recently as 2024 confirms that the human body radiates a measurable energy field that shifts and fluctuates based on your emotional state. When you experience fear, your bio-photon emissions spike in specific infrared wavelengths. When you feel love, the emissions shift to different frequencies. These are not just poetic metaphors. These are measurable, physical phenomena. And if human science, with its advanced equipment, can barely detect these emissions, imagine what beings operating on higher dimensional frequencies can perceive. To them, every human emotion is a visible light show. Every trauma is a harvest signal. Every moment of suffering is a dinner bell. You are not just living your life, you are producing their sustenance. And the harvest, it never stops. The moment you grasp that human suffering is a product, not merely a tragedy, the entire structure of our civilization snaps into horrifying focus. Look at the world through the lens of Loosh cultivation. Suddenly, everything makes sense. Why does the news cycle focus relentlessly on disasters, crimes, and conflicts? Because fear is the most potent Loosh generator in existence. Why do entertainment industries glorify violence, tragedy, and trauma? Because emotional devastation produces energy spikes that can be harvested from millions of viewers simultaneously. Why do social media algorithms prioritize content that makes you angry, anxious, or depressed? Because your negative emotions are literally being farmed at scale. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is agriculture. And you, my friend, are the crop. Robert Monroe's encounters revealed that Loosh harvesting operates on multiple intricate levels. The beings he communicated with explained that Earth was specifically designed as a Loosh garden, carefully balanced to produce maximum emotional output without ever destroying the source population. Think about it. If humans were perpetually happy, Loosh production would plummet. If humans were utterly destroyed, the farm would cease to exist. So the system maintains a perfect, delicate equilibrium of suffering. Enough pain to generate a constant flow of Loosh. Enough hope to keep humans reproducing and continuing the cycle. This is why every generation believes things will get better. Yet suffering persists across centuries. The farm must continue operating. The harvest must never end. The Reincarnation Trap. But the harvesters are not passive observers. They have refined their extraction process over thousands of years. Ancient structures like organized religion, hierarchical governments, and systems of economic slavery were not created to uplift humanity. They were created to concentrate Loosh production. Consider the concept of eternal damnation, taught by major religions. The fear of hell generates more sustained Loosh than almost any other belief system. Billions of humans living in terror of eternal torture, their fear frequencies broadcasting constantly into dimensions we cannot perceive. Or consider the economic system, wage slavery, crushing debt, poverty, the constant fear of homelessness. These are not mere accidents of capitalism. They are deliberate engineering. A population in constant financial anxiety produces Loosh 24 hours a day. Even while you sleep, your subconscious worry about bills, health, and survival generates harvestable energy. Monroe also uncovered something even more disturbing: the reincarnation trap. According to the beings he encountered, when humans die and their consciousness separates from the body, they are met with a brilliant, inviting white light. Religious programming teaches humans to move towards this light, believing it leads to heaven or enlightenment. But Monroe learned that this light is actually a soul recycling mechanism. When a consciousness enters this light, its memories are wiped clean, and it is reincarnated back into the Earth farm system to begin producing Loosh all over again. The white light is not salvation. It is the entrance to a processing plant where your consciousness is prepared and repackaged for another lifetime of energy extraction. This is why ancient mystics and shamanic traditions warned against following any external light after death. They knew what modern humans have forgotten. The light, my friend, is a trap. The Gnostic Archons operate using this exact same mechanism. According to the hypostasis of the Archons and other Nag Hammadi texts, these entities cannot create their own life force. They are parasitic by nature, existing only by draining energy from organic beings. The texts describe Archons appearing in dreams, influencing thoughts, and generating fears that keep humans locked in material existence. They are like intrapsychic mind parasites, accessing human consciousness through telepathy and simulation. In modern terms, we might call these parasitic thought forms intrusive ideations or engineered anxieties. But the ancients knew exactly what they were: feeding mechanisms for entities existing in frequencies invisible to human eyes. And here's the truly sinister aspect. The Archons and other Loosh harvesters don't just feed on negative emotions. They have learned to farm positive emotions as well. Love, devotion, worship, these also produce Loosh, though of a different frequency. This is why religious systems demand worship, adoration, and devotional energy. Every prayer, every ritual, every moment of spiritual ecstasy produces Loosh that flows upward to entities masquerading as gods. The beings Monroe encountered confirmed this. They harvest both suffering and devotion, despair and ecstasy. The entire emotional spectrum of humanity is food for something that operates just beyond the edge of your perception. The mechanics of extraction. Modern science is slowly catching up with these ancient revelations. Researchers studying Kirlian photography, a technique that captures the electromagnetic field around living organisms, have documented that human energy fields change dramatically based on emotional states. Experiments conducted in 2023 showed that trauma, fear, and anxiety produce visible disruptions in the human biofield, disruptions that emit specific infrared frequencies. These frequencies are invisible to the naked eye, but they are absolutely real, and they are absolutely measurable. Now imagine beings whose entire sensory apparatus is tuned precisely to these frequencies. To them, a grieving mother radiates like a searchlight, a terrified soldier blazes like a beacon, a heartbroken lover glows with harvestable energy. Human suffering is not invisible to the harvesters. It is a visible, tangible, edible resource, and they have been feeding on it since the dawn of human civilization. The question isn't whether this harvesting occurs. The evidence from ancient texts, modern research, and first-hand testimonies like Monroe's is overwhelming. The real question is, what can be done about it? And that answer requires understanding exactly what Loosh looks like, how it operates within the invisible electromagnetic spectrum, and how humans can stop producing it. Because the moment you stop feeding the harvesters, you become free, and freedom is the one thing they cannot allow. If you could truly see the full electromagnetic spectrum, you would witness something that would shatter your understanding of reality. The air around you is not empty. It is saturated with invisible wavelengths, layers upon layers of information, energy, and entities operating in frequencies your eyes were never designed to perceive. The visible light you see, that narrow band between violet and red, is a prison of perception, keeping you blind to the true nature of your existence. But modern science has given us tools to measure what our biology cannot see, and what those measurements reveal is terrifying. Humans emit constant electromagnetic radiation. Your heartbeat generates measurable electromagnetic pulses. Your neurons fire with electrical signals that produce detectable fields. Your cells emit bio-photons, weak light particles that pulse with your emotional state. You are not a solid object. You are a living antenna, broadcasting your internal state across multiple frequencies, and something is listening. Scientists at institutions including the Max Planck Institute and research facilities in Japan have confirmed that the human body emits biophotons in the ultraviolet and near-infrared ranges. These emissions are not constant. They fluctuate dramatically based on stress, emotion, and consciousness. A study published in 2024 demonstrated that human biophoton emissions increase by as much as 200% during moments of extreme fear or anxiety. Think about what that means. Your terror is literally visible to anything operating in the ultraviolet spectrum. Your suffering blazes like a fire in frequencies just beyond human sight. And according to Robert Monroe and the ancient Gnostics, entities exist in precisely those frequencies, watching, waiting, harvesting. The electromagnetic spectrum spans from extremely low-frequency radio waves, which can be miles long, all the way to ultra-high-frequency gamma rays, which are smaller than atomic nuclei. The visible spectrum sits in a tiny slice, around 500 nanometers, but the ultraviolet spectrum, which begins at around 400 nanometers, is where biophoton emissions concentrate during moments of emotional distress. The infrared spectrum, which begins at around 700 nanometers, is where thermal and electromagnetic signals from the human nervous system are most intense. These are the ranges where Loosh becomes visible, not to human eyes, but to beings whose sensory organs are tuned to these frequencies. Monroe described Loosh as having distinct qualities and grades. The highest quality Loosh, according to the entities he encountered, comes from emotions that involve deep attachment and subsequent loss. The love of a parent for a child, followed by the death of that child, produces Loosh of extraordinary potency. The devotion between romantic partners, followed by betrayal, generates Loosh of a different but equally valuable frequency. Trauma bonding, where a victim develops attachment to their abuser, creates a particularly complex Loosh signature that is highly prized. This is why human society is structured to maximize these experiences. Romance is glorified, encouraging deep attachments. Family bonds are considered sacred, ensuring profound grief when they are severed. And mechanisms like war, disease, poverty, and crime ensure that these bonds are constantly being shattered, generating endless harvests of high-grade Loosh. But the harvesters are not passive observers. They actively manipulate events to maximize production. Monroe learned that certain entities specialize in orchestrating human experiences, specifically to generate Loosh spikes. They influence decisions, arrange coincidences, and engineer tragedies to ensure maximum emotional output. This is not supernatural. This is interdimensional agriculture, and it operates through mechanisms that appear to human perception, like random chance or fate. That car accident that killed your friend, that financial disaster that destroyed your family, that relationship that ended in devastating heartbreak. From the perspective of the Loosh harvesters, these are not tragedies, they are successful harvests, and the frequency signature of your grief is their reward. The Gnostic texts provide even more specific details. The Apocryphon of John, another Nag Hammadi scripture, describes how the Archons create what it calls the counterfeit spirit, an artificial overlay on human consciousness that generates false desires, fears, and attachments. This counterfeit spirit is specifically designed to keep humans trapped in emotional cycles that produce Loosh. You think you are pursuing your own goals, your own happiness, your own meaning, but the Gnostics would say you are actually following implanted programs designed to lead you into suffering. The desire for wealth leads to greed and anxiety. The desire for love leads to attachment and heartbreak. The desire for meaning leads to existential despair. Every path you are offered leads to the same destination, emotional suffering that produces harvestable energy. Modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm these ancient insights. Research into neural implantation and subconscious programming has demonstrated that human decision-making is far less free than we believe. Studies show that up to 90% of human decisions are made by subconscious processes before conscious awareness even occurs. You think you are choosing your thoughts and emotions, but in reality, your consciousness is responding to pre-programmed patterns that exist below your awareness. And if the Gnostics and Monroe are correct, those patterns were not programmed by evolution or experience alone. They were engineered by entities that harvest the emotional energy those patterns produce. The spectrum of suffering is vast. Fear operates at certain frequencies, grief at others, rage, despair, anxiety, loneliness, shame. Each produces a distinct electromagnetic signature in the infrared and ultraviolet ranges, and the harvesters have learned to read these signatures with perfect precision. They know which emotions produce the most valuable loosh. They know which life events generate the strongest spikes, and they know how to arrange human reality to maximize production. You are not living in a random universe. You are living in a carefully designed system, and the design is not for your benefit. It is for them. The harvester's tools. If humans are loosh farms, then there must be a harvesting technology. There must be mechanisms, structures, and systems through which emotional energy is extracted and transmitted to wherever these entities exist. And those mechanisms are hiding in plain sight, operating on frequencies we cannot perceive, using physics we barely understand. Robert Monroe's investigations revealed that the primary harvesting mechanism is consciousness itself. When a human experiences intense emotion, their consciousness generates a specific frequency pattern. This pattern resonates across dimensional boundaries, creating what Monroe described as a beacon. Entities tuned to these frequencies can detect the beacon instantaneously, regardless of physical distance, because the signal is not transmitted through three-dimensional space. It is transmitted through consciousness itself, which operates outside the limitations of space-time. This concept aligns perfectly with cutting-edge quantum physics. Researchers studying quantum entanglement have demonstrated that particles can influence each other instantaneously across any distance, suggesting that information can travel through dimensions beyond our four-dimensional space-time. Consciousness researchers like physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff have proposed that consciousness itself may be a quantum phenomenon, operating through microtubules in neurons that interact with the quantum field. If consciousness is quantum, then it exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And if it exists across multiple dimensions, then entities operating in higher dimensional frequencies can access it directly. They do not need physical tools to harvest loosh. They harvest it through direct interface with human consciousness. But there are also physical technologies that facilitate extraction. Monroe encountered what he described as thought-form constructs, artificial structures built from consciousness itself that act as collection nodes for loosh. These constructs appear to human perception as religious buildings, sacred sites, monuments, and ritual spaces. When humans gather in these locations and engage in emotional activities like worship, grief, or celebration, their collective loosh emissions are concentrated and channeled through the construct to the harvesters. This is why religious architecture has such specific geometric patterns. Why are cathedrals built with soaring heights and resonant acoustics? Why are temples positioned on specific ley lines and energy vortexes? These are not artistic choices, they are engineering specifications. The buildings are harvesting devices designed to concentrate and transmit emotional energy. Kirlian photography provides visual evidence of this phenomenon. When researchers photograph individuals before and after visiting sacred sites or participating in religious rituals, the subject's biofields show dramatic changes. The energy field dims, becoming less vibrant, as if something has been extracted. Skeptics argue this is simply exhaustion or psychological suggestion, But if you understand Loosh theory, the pattern becomes obvious. The ritual drained their emotional energy, and the sacred site channeled it elsewhere. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable energy transfer, and it is happening in every church, temple, mosque, and shrine on the planet. Television and digital media represent a more modern harvesting technology. When you watch news coverage of a disaster, your fear and sadness produce Loosh, but the screen itself acts as a focusing device. The electromagnetic radiation from the screen interacts with your biofield, and some researchers believe this creates a sympathetic resonance that amplifies the Loosh signal. Millions of people watching the same tragedy simultaneously produce a coordinated Loosh harvest of staggering magnitude. This is why media corporations focus obsessively on traumatic content. It is not just about ratings and attention. The emotional energy of the audience is being harvested on a mass scale. Every viewer is an energy donor. Every screen is a collection point. But the most sophisticated harvesting technology is biological. Monroe discovered that the human pineal gland, often called the third eye in mystical traditions, functions as a transdimensional antenna. The pineal gland produces dimethyltryptamine, a molecule that facilitates altered states of consciousness. In these altered states, the boundary between dimensions becomes thin, and Loosh extraction becomes far more efficient. This is why indigenous cultures use psychedelic plants in ritual contexts, not for recreation, but because those states open doorways. Unfortunately, those doorways allow traffic in both directions. When your consciousness expands, you become more accessible to entities operating in higher frequencies. Your Loosh becomes easier to harvest. This is why many psychedelic experiences involve encounters with entities, beings of light, or geometric intelligences. You are not hallucinating. You are perceiving the harvesters directly. The pineal gland is also suppressed by fluoride, a chemical added to water supplies in many countries under the guise of dental health. Studies have confirmed that fluoride accumulates in the pineal gland and calcifies its tissue, reducing its function. If the pineal gland is a transdimensional antenna, then fluoridating the population reduces their ability to perceive the harvest. It keeps humans blind, docile, and unaware that they are being farmed. This is not accidental. Every system that limits human consciousness, from pharmaceutical sedation to propaganda to toxic food additives, serves the same purpose: keeping the livestock ignorant and productive. Monroe also described harvesting technology that operates during sleep and death. When humans enter sleep, their consciousness shifts into frequencies where Loosh collection is more efficient. Dreams are not random neurological noise. Dreams are engineered experiences designed to generate emotional responses. Nightmares produce fear-based Loosh. Anxiety dreams about failure or exposure produce shame-based Loosh. Even positive dreams serve the harvest, as the disappointment of waking from a beautiful dream generates a specific frequency of longing and loss. And when death occurs, the consciousness fully separates from the biological shell, and the ultimate extraction takes place. The entire lifetime of stored emotional energy is harvested at once. This is why near-death experiences describe seeing their life flash before their eyes. They are witnessing their Loosh production history as it is downloaded and extracted. The technology of extraction is everywhere. It is woven into the architecture of civilization, embedded in the biology of the human body, and operating through every screen, ritual, and traumatic experience. You have been living inside a harvesting machine your entire life, and you never noticed because you cannot see the frequencies where the machinery operates. But now you know, and once you know, everything changes. Breaking free. The most dangerous information in this entire revelation is not that you are being harvested. It is that you can stop it. The moment you become aware of the Loosh system, you gain the ability to starve the harvesters, and entities that feed on human emotion do not tolerate starvation. This is why this knowledge has been suppressed, ridiculed, and hidden behind layers of religious dogma and scientific skepticism for thousands of years. The farm only works if the cattle do not know they are cattle. The moment you wake up, the entire system begins to collapse. and the farmers will do everything in their power to put you back to sleep. So if you have made it this far, congratulations. You are now a target, but you are also free, and freedom is worth any cost. If you find yourself resonating with these hidden truths, if this conversation about unseen forces and the true nature of reality sparks something deep within you, then you're on a path that few dare to tread. There's a whole world of esoteric knowledge waiting to be uncovered, dimensions of understanding that can truly transform your perception of existence. I've compiled a playlist dedicated to these very topics: ancient lore, forbidden texts, and the hidden mechanisms of our reality. You can find the link to that playlist in the pinned comment below. It's an invitation to explore further, to truly open your eyes to what lies beyond the veil. Robert Monroe spent the final decades of his life researching how to exit the Loosh farm. His findings are documented in his books, particularly Far Journeys, but they are often misunderstood or ignored. Monroe discovered that emotional neutrality is the key to stopping Loosh production. The harvesters feed on emotional spikes, both positive and negative, so the solution is not to become perpetually happy or optimistically naive. The solution is to become detached. This does not mean apathy or depression. It means conscious observation without emotional identification. When a tragedy occurs, you witness it without collapsing into despair. When good fortune arrives, you acknowledge it without clinging to it. You experience life fully, but you do not feed the experience with emotional energy that can be harvested. The ancient Gnostics called this state apatheia, often mistranslated as apathy, but actually meaning freedom from suffering through non-attachment. The Gnostic texts teach that the Archons cannot force anything upon a sovereign consciousness. They can only manipulate through deception, fear, and illusion. When you explicitly withdraw your consent to participate in the Loosh farm, when you declare your sovereignty as a free consciousness, you create a shield they cannot penetrate. This is not magical thinking. This is quantum mechanics. Consciousness collapses probability fields. Your intention shapes reality. When you intend to be free, you create a frequency pattern that repels parasitic entities. They can no longer feed on you because you are no longer producing the frequency they consume. The final step is helping others wake up. The harvest depends on mass ignorance. Every human who becomes aware weakens the entire system. This is why sharing this information is crucial. Even though it will be dismissed, attacked, and ridiculed, the harvesters will use every tool at their disposal to discredit this knowledge. They will deploy debunkers, skeptics, controlled opposition figures, and psychological warfare to make you doubt what you now understand. But remember, truth does not need defense. It only needs expression. The people ready to hear this will recognize it instantly, because some part of them has always known they were trapped. Your job is simply to speak it aloud. The resonance will do the rest. Robert Monroe died in 1995, but his work continues through the Monroe Institute, an organization dedicated to consciousness research and exploration. His techniques for achieving out-of-body states are taught worldwide, giving thousands of people direct experience of realities beyond physical perception. Many of these explorers have confirmed Monroe's findings. There are entities in invisible frequencies. There is a system designed to harvest human emotional energy, and there is a way out. The door has always been open. We simply never noticed it, because we were trained to look in the wrong direction, to look outside ourselves for salvation, when salvation only comes from within, to fear death, when death is simply a transition, to produce emotion endlessly, when peace is our natural state. You are not a victim. You are an infinite consciousness, trapped in a finite game. And now that you know the rules, you can choose to stop playing, stop feeding the harvesters, stop generating Loosh, stop consenting to your own captivity. The moment you do, you become something the system was never designed to handle, a free human being. And free humans are the most dangerous force in the universe. Welcome to your liberation. The harvest ends now. What was the most unsettling revelation for you today? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's start a conversation that truly challenges the narrative.